Hey, Melissa, it's Quinn. Hey, Melissa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Hey, Dwayne, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Off one Zoom call on to another.
Same for me. Hey, Melissa, could you send Kip Cornett the Zoom information?
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Everybody survived the weekend. Kim Shelton says she's going to be running a little late. She's got to start up another meeting at 11 before she can join us.
That's fine.
So we'll see here. So is that all we're missing now?
I think we're missing Kevin and Kip as well.
All right, Pat. I didn't know if they were both still joining us.
Yeah, they'll be here.
Okay.
Melissa, did you send around that that World Health Organization thing I just sent you a minute ago?
Yeah, I did. I just sent it out.
Yeah, we got it. I'm
Awesome.
reading through it right now.
Webinar.
Awesome.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we go forward, I think it's some good guidance that we can potentially use to inform what we may put in a report.
Okay. All right, I see that now.
Quinn, I don't know if you noticed this weekend, the CDC released stuff on pools. It just went out this weekend. So I know that I think Mayor Gordon's already announced about our decision, but I didn't know if any of that would help as well.
I appreciate that. We will take a look.
Yep. I'll pull it up real quick so you don't have to dig for it. I saved it because we've got a lot of requests about summertime stuff.
Awesome.
Julian, can you send that to me as well?
I will. I'll just send it to a batch.
Thank
I'll
you.
be glad to. No problem.
Well, Dwayne, if you want to go ahead and get started, I can go ahead and read the statement that we've got to read each time.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, This meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150 as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting.
Thank you, Quinn. I apologize. I'm doing a little puppy sitting while this is going on. So you hear, it's not me that you hear in the background. It might be a little puppy. So like I said before, Kim Shelton's going to join us shortly after the hour. I know a lot of you spent some time. I appreciate everybody, because as I looked at the task myself on addressing some of that Q&A before the end of the day Friday, it's a lot of questions. And obviously some of you can answer all the questions, some differences of what level of things that you got to in your businesses, but I think that feedback was very helpful. As we saw on the agenda today, we're really going to discuss the reopening benchmarks and guidelines. And one of the things that, and I want you guys to chime in for sure on this, is as I went through that process, what I'm finding out for our group, I think our focus needs to be as much as possible, not on these dates, as much as it is of the things that make up why we think this date could be possible. Because it seems like people are getting so fixed on these dates. When things move, they can't let go of the date that you said I could do this. Since our meeting, some of the guidelines and things that have gone in place, we probably need to address some of the things that are out there for the state of Kentucky as far as some of the reopening that have happened or that are planned for at least June, that affects more our world, whether that's the opening of gyms. I believe that's June 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the youth leagues and activities, what those things are, because there's a lot of correspondence going out there about the June 15th date. So we need to make sure we're just aware of those. Are there any other ones that I'm missing that directly affect us that's coming up in the next month?
Dwayne, I'll get some of those dates here in just a second. But I do see youth sports. Governor Beshear has said can resume play as of June 15th. So that's a big one.
Well, and
So I think a lot of them
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The other thing is that the guidance was specific to outdoor, and various media outlets did not report it as such. They just said they can resume. That has the volleyball community a little bit up in arms because they're trying to get answers. We have asked for an official answer from Lieutenant Governor Coleman, who we work directly with, about the definition of youth. If you go by the WHO definition, it's actually 24 and under. Most everybody here looks at it a little bit younger than that, but we've asked for that interpretation as well as in the social distancing requirements that are out there. So I think we're going to get some information that will help, and whatever we get, we'll circulate, and I know you all will too.
I wasn't aware of the age 24 part of that, because that definitely.
Yeah, I just did some circulating the other day, and I thought, boy, that's a different definition than I've ever heard of youth. I may be younger than I thought.
So that's one big factor. Obviously, as we go through it, I'd like for us to be able to, some of the things I know from the university level, and Holly, I think you could chime in for sure on this too. Obviously, we're dealing with a big decision-making phase, and I probably want to stay away from the word phase, because I think there's a central focus on what phase 1, phase 2, and 3 mean globally or nationally. I've asked our folks when we're talking about our plans, maybe we need to stay away from the word phase, because we want that to be a confusion of what might be phase 1 for UK athletics, for instance, might look like something that's happening in phase 2 or 3 nationally. So I said, you might want to use some different terms, because we don't want this to be confusing when you start talking to people or when you come public with plans. Since we've last talked, you've seen a lot more plans out there from cities and universities. Obviously, the state of Kentucky is a little more restrictive than our conference partners. We are not as far along as with that, but I think they're expecting to have something in somewhat of the same timetable that we're trying to get something to the governor's office as well. But I think one of the things where it was harder for me to answer some of the questions because we're not in a hurry because we know as SEC, we can't have any activities through May 31st right now. And obviously they'll be voting whether that extends or not. And so we're trying to more match those timetables, which are a little different than what we're talking about from the state. So that's why I don't have as much to share directly from the University of Kentucky Athletics where we are because of that. But thinking broadly, obviously as a parent, I've got a baseball player and a cheerleader right here at home. So, this hits home now that I know they're both going to be youth for a while, thanks to Julian. Trying to focus on what our next steps are, and just the reopening benchmarks and guidelines is such a focus on what do you guys think are the have-tos that we've got to accomplish, obviously getting past what nationally or state guidelines say as a minimum, because obviously we know we're not doing anything before that. But even after that, what are our next benchmarks for reopening of any kind for our athletics? Any thoughts on that?
Dwayne, are you looking at taking it step by step, like you said, rather than phases, starting with the getting the youth together practices, starting at that level before games and tournaments and competition?
I believe that obviously that as a different age groups, that means something different. So technically the older kids, depending on the type of sport it is, let's just say the big level sport of football, they know that they need training, practice before actual games and activities that's even more health and safety standpoint, where say youth league baseball, that's more a choice of quality of play versus it is, there's some health, but they might not need the same 6 weeks or 2 weeks. I think obviously some of those leagues and organizations going to have to make different timetables on that, but I'm just trying to think about, I would say what we probably need to address because of the state talking about gyms and like them talking about the 2nd and the 15th, I think we need to talk about workouts, like gym kind of things, whether that's high school football and things that are going to that area, but also separately getting on a field or court or play, making sure people understand what outdoor means, what indoor means. That was just where my head was going. I don't know. I'm not fixed on a direction if everybody else thinking something else, but based on knowing those things, we probably give people a little more guidance on some thoughts on what that means, because that's pretty much just throwing it out there, which means anything can happen. But most people think every gym's going to open, everybody's going to them, no matter what's in place. That's the scary thought. And I'm just trying to figure out what are those other things that go along with that minimum date.
The one thing that I noticed in the article that Jillian put out about the baseball tournament is you're right, Dwayne, you've got competition, you have the level of competition, workouts and practices, you've got the levels of indoor and outdoor, but then you also have the consideration of the athletes and the fans. Is the expectation that the governor or the mayor's office expect, some guidance on both of those parameters as well, athletes and fans, or are we just focused on the athletic and the competition piece?
I think we have to at least address the social distancing part of the fan element. I think that's probably the low-hanging fruit in this, because but then after that, you can accomplish whether that's okay or not, because most of the things we're talking about is not necessarily hardcore revenue producing is the reasoning, but some minimal standards of that has to be accomplished seems to be the things that are in all the phases that we need to address along with that. So I think that would go hand in hand to not leave that out, because people assume you don't say it if you can do it, right?
Yeah, totally agree, Dwayne, because I think that leagues are, there is a difference. And I think maybe what we can do is help identify consideration points. But certainly if you're going to limit attendance or insist on social distancing, you're going to have to think about manpower to do that. You're going to have to, these are things we're going to challenge leagues and or games to think about, is that you're not just going to be able to say, as our governor found out, you're not going to be able to just say you shall wear masks and have everybody salute. you're going to have, they've got to think about the risk of not monitoring that in the fans. The playing thing, what I see, and I really like something you said earlier, and I'm going to rephrase it because I don't have a long memory, but basically there's levels where competitive equity might be a priority, and there's levels where it's not. If you watch right now the debate going on in the NFL resumption, you've already got Mike Tomlin, who's from a community that's going to be locked down for a little while because they still had a pretty good surge, concerned that some other school or some other team in another population might get more practice, might get more practice with their skills before the start. It's a little different as you come down the levels, where we, I think, are focused on, yes, the university top level, yes, the university next level, yes, the high school level, but all levels of safety. And I think we've got to give them touch points to think about much more than we may be able to give them a X, Y, Z, because, here's what you're going to do on June 2nd. Here's what you're going to do on June 9th. I know in our case, we won't need the full 5 to 6 weeks that I'm hearing the Division I schools are trying to think of on-site practice before we actually have a game. But we're going to have at least 2 before they put on the first bit of gear, and then phase in the gear. So you're right. I think the way we probably want to think about this, and I don't want to make it so voluminous because I have a tendency to over-engineer stuff. I don't want to make it so voluminous that you've got all 27 sports listed. But, considerations for fans, considerations for competitors, considerations for officials, considerations for organizers, and probably just a bulleted list of things they got to ask is a great starting point, kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
And I think we're finding that in some of these other plans. Go ahead, Blaine. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm finding that in my mind, when I see our finished product, it's kind of going to look like how the phase 1, 2, 3 kind of rolled out, where it's more bullet points. Hey, where's my, because people need some guidelines. Like if I'm thinking about, okay, what do I need to be making sure that I'm thinking about? Oh, I didn't think about the fan element, like Kim said, or I didn't think about, hey, if I'm in a certain sport, do I need to have some quarantine time before we even start some of these things? Some of the university things, but Holly and I are dealing with, bringing people back to our campus. Do we need to build in 14 days still? Or reminding people of things that are already in place that are not been listening to Kentucky news every day, right? So some of those different elements, and I'm just trying to figure out how do we get to that point, because I think before we meet next time, we need to have all these bullet points of things, so that way, whether it takes a final meeting or final document, those things are organized to a point. This is what we're looking at. Hey, have we addressed everything?
Well, and I think, Dwayne, you're on it too, for what we've been doing with we're calling it a roadmap back to play, but for high schools. But I think the pressure is going to be on Quinn and Melissa and Kevin too, because I think at some point they should be able to watch what our churches are going through and the challenges they're going through. A number of them are not going to forget all the legal arguments. Let's talk about the logistics of, if you're going to open up June 15th, you better be ordering sanitizer now. You better be looking at thermometers now, because you're going to have long lead times. Those kind of things I think we can help people with. And as they monitor what's going on in other like groups, like churches, et cetera, a lot of that's going to be common. If you're an event organizer, if I'm Holly trying to hold something on campus, I'm looking at the exact same issues that Southland Christian's looking at, or Trinity Hill's looking at my church. You're trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal in sports? And I'm not talking about big timers, but I am talking about it, because right next to our tailgate spot are 4 porta johns. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to regularly clean restrooms when portalets are being used. I mean, there are a number of issues that the average Joe who just wants their kid out there playing is not thinking about.
Right. And the good thing is that we're not talking about collegiate sports in the summer.
Correct.
Because I think that's even more problematic.
Yep.
I think you've got to get to the focus to help the people, and because the activities we're talking about in the month of June or later are going to be different for the different groups based on what we got going on.
I mean, most of my inquiries right now are about cross-country meets at the horse park. I mean, really, because they got to have porta johns. There's no bathrooms out there. And the permanent stuff they have out there hadn't been maintained in 2 years because of their budget freeze. So, you know, you're really, it is different for each audience. You and Holly are blessed with a little bit of a delay, but you got to be planning because you have a different scale once you roll it out.
Yeah, it's about people coming to campus and, you know, are we the first groups to get together versus following the lead of what's going on our campus? I mean, are we the first groups? I mean, the scary thing about the gyms opening up public, obviously from an athletic standpoint, I'd rather our student athletes be in our gym before I have them in a public one in Lexington, because we can clean it, we can practice social distancing, we can, you know, schedule it and, you know, make sure that the risks are minimal, where even if we start a week or two after that and people have been doing that already in their home state or here, we don't know what they're bringing to the table when they start. So some of those things, I know we've talked over and over about some of the issues we got to get through, but I don't know if Quinn, Kevin, Melissa, what you've seen on some of these other subcommittees. Do we need to have someone, or is that me, like starting to craft and actually jotting down all these bullet points and doing that, or is that staff thing, just from a responsibility?
Dwayne, I think the answer is a little of both. If this group can give us kind of the good bullet points that you want to make sure get into this document, then we can assist in getting a document back to you for your, you know, sign off on corrections. I also think, just real quick before I lose the thought on what Julian was just saying, if this committee has items on the agenda that they want us to specifically ask the governor or his team for more guidance on, then we can definitely collect those and try to get that as well. Maybe not as part of the report, but as a side issue. And then I think one quick thing is, I see Kip on here. This is designed to maybe be multi-phases. You know, this report's phase one, then there's phase two. And all of us have been talking about on the side, how do we then communicate with the fan base or whoever that these are safe events at that point to come back to, but here is why, because you're going to have to adhere to this distancing. So any way that we can be useful to you all to help communicate that message, we want to try to be there too.
And just to add on to that as well, Julian, yeah, I think you make a really good point when looking at what some of these other subcommittees are doing, especially in terms of the faith-based subcommittee we have. CB Akins, he at his church has developed a really good start for how they're going to have in-person services, and I think, you know, we could do a lot of the same modeling that he's working on in terms of that sort of stuff. So Melissa's actually staffing that committee as well. So Melissa, if you could send that around maybe during or after this meeting, I think that would be very helpful as well. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some, you know, unique things, obviously, to athletics and to faith-based. But I think what we're going to find, and I hope I'm pretty confident we're going to find, when you talked about those consideration sets, there's so much interconnectivity, you know, transportation that's tied into athletic. I mean, you know, obviously restaurants, hotels, all that stuff. So it's, you know, this is going to be like putting a puzzle together. But I think it's been great that we've gotten a lot of, you know, good content to begin with, but start building. And as the staff puts this together, they're going to see those connection points.
Well, Kip, you hit on something there that I think that the problem I worry about in sports, and this is athletes and fans, it is very similar to the congregational issues that the faith-based groups are going to deal with, and that is the backing off of the bro hug and the I haven't seen you in 2 months, and the, you know, handshaking and natural goosing and gouging and punching and stuff that goes on, whether it's fans or competitors. It's almost going to require a little bit of a psychology marketing kind of thing to make people feel good about going, but knowing it's just going to feel different for a little while. And you can't just say you're going to go and not change anything. That's not going to work.
No. I had, there was one thing I thought, and again, not trying to go too far down the road, but is we've all consumed a lot of this stuff. The hotel industry is searching for solutions, and I don't know if anybody has seen the collaboration between Hilton Hotels and Mayo Clinic.
Mhm.
I don't know if you all seen that, but it's developing, and they're calling it, I think it's called Clean Stay, but it
Yeah.
shows all those different pieces that, again, I think that's part of that whole psychology that you're talking about, and consistency. But anyway, the good news is there's a lot of people, and all of us, I think, are getting a lot of content to get us to this final roadmap. I shouldn't say
And also-
final, always evolving roadmap.
Right.
Yeah, the next step.
Just one quick note, and I believe Melissa has sent this out. Our director of Parks and Recreation, Monica Conrad, sent me during the middle of this meeting. She's watching. She sent us LFUCG's proposed baseball and softball precautions in terms of getting back to youth baseball and softball. So obviously it looks pretty heavy on content. So maybe after the meeting, we can check that out. I think that would be very informative.
Very good.
Do you guys think that it's probably broader to try to walk through each? It's like, let's start with phase 1. Because we talked a lot about the phase 2 to phase 3 transition and what we can do there. That's probably more the fun time when things we can do a lot more things. But now that we're talking about a few things statewide that are included and still in phase 1, do we need to make sure we at least address whether that's, hey, we're saying nothing, or just maybe that's the first step to address? Because phase 1, obviously, there's no school or organized youth activities, but the gyms can open. That's kind of part of that, right? That's listed in phase 1. Do we address, as long as we're in phase 1, because am I thinking about the phases? Is it just kind of everybody kind of knows what triggers to the next phase, allows us some semblance of organization about, okay, what happens? Okay, now I'm in this. What else can I do from our side of it? Does that make sense? I'm just trying to basically, like, if I'm an outside person, okay, hey, we're in phase 1. This is what we can do.
Or
then
even
phase 2.
Or Dwayne, I think you can, that plus, because part of this committee's guidance is what should occur, is what you think would fit into each of those steps. What would be a good recommendation to go with each one of those steps?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people might not know what those mean or what constitutes. Do we need to make sure we're covering what constitutes moving from one to the other, the guidelines? This is what triggers, especially in our world. Maybe there's not as many different factors. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around what the finished product looks. I mean, I know I looked at the samples, but walking that walk to get there without having all the different bullet points in place. So maybe we should concentrate on, okay, what are the different things? Let's just figure out what are all the bullet points, and then we can figure out how to organize them or where they fit into this later. Maybe that's a better route, because I can get there. I can come up with all the different things and start writing them down. And we've been talking about those. Maybe we need to, I don't mind typing up all those as we discuss the big items. Let's maybe use our time wisely the next half hour about what are all the different levels of things. So that way I can deliver those to staff to help us organize, and then we can disseminate back out to you what we feel like, what's in the different buckets. So that way, when we come back for our next discussion, we can figure out if that's a finalized document to the level of it is, and then we can go from there. Does that sound okay?
I think that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Dwayne, are you talking about breaking that down based on like a facility, like a KBA, and then a team, what it's going to require for the facility to open, for the team to get together to practice, and even an event like the Bluegrass State Games, I'm sure they're still in limbo in regards to, would they be able to do all the sports, any of the sports, some of the sports?
Yeah, so I'm saying every one of those things that we can think of, let's get it down on paper, so to speak, so we can share and make sure we're not forgetting anything. So as we start organizing it and getting into the different areas, that while it's fresh on our minds and we've been talking about it, I want to make sure I'm recording those things. I might have to go back and watch a few little things to make sure that we caught up. I don't know. Do these are these? I know these are live, but are they recorded too or no?
Yeah, they're available on YouTube 12 hours after the meeting.
Okay, that's good to know.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is a lot of those considerations, Dwayne, I was just skimming through Monica's stuff on baseball, softball, and you know, there's another example of somebody that's, you know, got a list of things, a lot of which we've already been talking about, and we can either give feedback on that or also use some of those things because it hits all the areas. What are we going to tell teams about when they get there and when they can get on the field? What are we going to tell people if we have a positive case? And we got to worry about ages matter here. When I'm dealing with primarily adults at Dwayne's level and Holly's level, it's a little bit different than dealing with kids and federally protected records and medical records and all the other stuff. So we probably, I think you're right. Coming up with just seeing what bullets are missing is probably our best. And then it's got to be left in the hands of staff to kind of put a format together because they want to be consistent, I'm sure, across the subcommittees. So we don't need to kind of go crazy on our own. I think we can just, what are all the issues? And a lot of them are in stuff we talked about already. I know that the interim president at my alma mater, Holly knows, just put out something late last week that their kind of thoughts on a start back. I know Dr. Capilouto has as well. All of those contain different bullet points that we might put a different time frame on, but it's the same thing. Everybody's got to consider the same thing. Can we make the public safe? Can we make the participants safe? Can we make the facility safe? And what if somebody's infected? I mean, we are all kind of covering those areas.
Would it be easy to start back at maybe the beginning and say, okay, for any facility or team to even get together or facility to be open, here's the considerations. Got to have PPE equipment, got to have sanitizer, got to have a cleaning plan, have to have a plan for, if physicals are involved or not involved, have to have some kind of education. Would it be easier if we kind of, set it in a little plan like that? And then put bullets under each of that. So getting your facility or your team ready, then your team returns, then there's actual practice, then there's actual competition.
That makes sense.
I think so.
Very much so. And
So,
the facility things, really, there's a lot of that framework already done. And I'm not trying to the best work we ever come up with was steal the first idea. But I think that the churches and stuff they've already had to plow this ground. We know for getting back, we obviously know that the governor has to lift the ban on workout facilities before we can talk about working out here. Then we got Dwayne's issue. Should we let them work out first with us or first with them? And that may be different depending upon the level. Because my concern, as I shared with you all the very first conference call about with other states opening up first and people going down south and playing and bringing back this stuff. That's a concern we all should have if you're not first out there.
Well, and that brings up a point. If you allow teams from whether it's within Kentucky or outside of Kentucky, is there some kind of protocol for those away teams to have some kind of testing, temperature and otherwise, even to participate in the game?
Or Holly, what if one of your first consideration points is you should evaluate whether you want out of area teams involved because of the potential risk. That's the kind of checklist we can give them.
No, that's, I think you're exactly right.
Those are good things.
So that adds a layer, right? So you have facility, you have teams gathering or getting together, you have teams practicing, you have competition beginning, but then you have the hosting of events.
Right.
Then I think even as you look at teams, you break those down to contact, no contact, and those with equipment that would potentially be shared, like volleyball, whereas, some other sports, you don't have that as a consideration.
Well, the article that I shared with y'all this morning from St. Louis, one of the pictures, if you saw, is they're wiping the baseball down. And as we said the other day, most of you know that in Little League and travel ball, they'll use a ball till it falls apart versus changing every pitch that they might do at the college or pro level. And Kevin, I tell you what, if you can get a better interpretation than I've been able to get, they introduced a term when they talked about June 15th from the governor's office called low contact that doesn't exist anywhere else. Nobody seems to be able to define that. I think the intent was you have little interaction with another player, but that's a key definitional thing, because I could argue that if you had 150 people in a 50-yard wide starting block for cross country, you can't have social distancing. But if you only had 50 in a 100-yard thing, you probably could. And so you're going to get into, does that mean you're jostling at the first, or is this through play? So they're trying to say soccer's after baseball, which I think they were, but low contact's not a term of art, that's for sure. It's a unique term come out of them. So those definitional things are really key, because that'll play into Dwayne's thoughts of the stair-step implementation. When are we in what period?
Right. I was thinking about when you start talking about cross country, my picture of cross country is a group of people that start out all together and then dissipate till people are doing better. Are you staggering the runners and it's doing it by time now?
Well, I mean,
you
can do the old Hokum Karam thing where you start almost like a relay and you don't get together. But then what you're faced with, and this is what I'm grappling with our cross country community, it's not it's a 3.2 mile race most of the time, or 2.5, not depending on what your distance is. So it's not the first 100 yards that's low contact, and it's certainly not the last 100 yards where everybody's gathering in by the finish line to see who finishes where. The middle is pretty spread out.
Right.
Most of y'all will be well ahead of me. That's not a problem. But when we start, we're going to be together, and when we get to the end, we're kind of going to be together.
Well, and at the end, they all fall down as if they hit a wall.
It's melodrama queen. The drama department at either one of your all schools cannot exceed the drama at the finish of a cross country race. No, you're correct.
But I'll make sure I know cross country start and finish as we get into. Save that for if we get to more technical sport to sport concerns that are unique. Exactly. I did take a look. I saw some of the stuff that the state of Missouri was doing as far as baseball, youth baseball. I don't know if you're aware. I'll probably pass along at the end of the meetings another article on that. And it was talking about totally changing the sport to wearing 2 gloves, to catcher 6 feet behind home plate to be 6 feet from the batter, which obviously changed the distance of the pitch. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed that even in the Fayette County thing, they're recommending that 2 steps, the catcher be 2 steps back. And as an old catcher, I'm struggling with that because I had guys that couldn't throw the ball 45 feet to begin with, much less throwing it 49. But you got to do what you got to do.
Right. So obviously, we're people looking for answers and they don't know where to go. And obviously, we're trying to create some guidelines so these leagues that got to make the rules and decide what each of them are doing. They need some guidelines that they know they have to adhere to. But after that, they're going to try to be creative to make it work, right? Or what's
I'll make you a suggestion, Dwayne, that you take it or tell me to jump in the lake. But one of the things that I've tried to really be consistent in, Holly talked about the media thing the other day. We had about 30 of our statewide media together, and we talked about that. The very first thing we have to say is that for the foreseeable future, 2020 will not look like 2019. Now, that's my opinion, because I think everybody's little area, that they're going to want everybody else's area to change. They're not going to want their little area. The fans aren't going to want their area to change. Not going to want their tents to have to move. They're not going to want, players aren't going to want to have to do this. I think we've got to start out by saying it's recognized that 2020 probably won't look like 2019. Not right now. We hope it gets there. But just a thought for you to process in your head. I defer to your judgment, but I think that's a lead-in piece that we probably got to be aware of.
I think that helps with people concentrating on what you can do versus what I can't do anymore. They get so wrapped up on the change, and it seems like, well, would you rather just be at home? I mean, we're trying to look at it as a positive. Yeah. We're trying to get to a point where we can get our youth out there to do some things and get back, taking steps back to get back to some sense of normalcy. Our new normal, though, I mean, It's not going to go back to where it is in any shape or form. I don't think life's going to be the same. So getting used to everybody just being down on it, because I've heard the parents chirping, whether it's the tournaments that Julian won't let them go to to the baseball models of other states that I don't want to play if we're doing that. And I mean, so
Any of the rest of you
trying to avoid getting wrapped up in that.
Well, any of the rest of you have nightmares about the day Stack did the honeybee thing that you go one over here, one over here, one over here?
Oh, yes.
I mean, for people that run events, that's just a nightmare because it's so true, you know, and I'm like, I wish he hadn't said that. That's what started all the travel ball stuff is, okay, y'all want to go to Georgia and bring this crap back, you know? So.
I mean, obviously, I think it takes some time to go through these bullet points and thoughts. I kind of thought that's what the Q&A started making me think about. Those were the questions versus necessarily the little things in each one. Obviously, I don't want to adhere to where we're limited to just this call, because it's going to take some time and research in your areas. Everybody have different things, but maybe we send those things. I don't know if that's best to send to me, craft all the common things together, get that to the staff, then we get a finished product and send out to the group, because I want some time to really give some thought in it. And it's going to take some of the documents that we've just received, some of the stuff that we haven't had a chance to read. I think there's some important stuff in there, whether that's the youth baseball, softball stuff, the things that Melissa shared as well. I think that's going to be a lot of big byproduct of it. What we learned last time, as soon as we got done, things changed, right? So it kind of helped us with our task. That's a moving target. I know I plan on having a lot more information about, we're doing this same thing. We're walking through it with different subcommittees at our level, checking with other schools. I'm going to have probably a lot more things by tomorrow. So by the next time we meet, or can add a lot more bullet points of all the little things that we can decide whether we want to include in ours or not. I think we'd rather have too much on the front end that we narrow down to be a focus and leave anything out. And so that's why I know we've kind of got out of the task of it, but I think we need to leave here. And if you've got any questions, knowing this is our so-called Q&A project that we need to deliver in a quick way in your world, what are the little things and bullet points? And there's not too much you can give. And then we can spend our time putting all those things together and then sharing, and then let's spend our time figuring out what we don't need in ours versus some of these areas were very specific about what such and such youth league can do, or what such and such school can do. We're not trying to recreate what Transy or UK is trying to do, but hey, here's the minimal guidelines that we're trying to say as a next step. The state's going to set this. So what can we add to help the mayor deliver to the governor to be able to say, okay, here's some added things on that to make people realize what goes into that versus everybody's mindset. Okay, now you say on the second, I can just go, or every company or business or every league or school or athletics, making sure that they've done their due diligence, because some of them are more equipped than others to have people in place that are already doing this work, right? And so I think the fact that we now have more information from other people, I think it gives us some help. When we started this committee, we had a Toyota document. It's about, and the 10 topics from the governor. So we got a lot more now because of other states being ahead in the process. So I think that's more helpful to us. Are there any other global thoughts on our next task?
Dwayne, I'm not exactly sure and how to what this looks like, but one of the things that I keep thinking about is governance. In the KHSAA, you all are the governance, but with Transy and UK, you all can't just decide, well, we're going to go play. You have whether it's the SEC or what leagues, as well as NCAA, and I wonder if there's any value and I don't know of how how that governance factor is going to play in too. Because we can't just independently, say, here we go. If you're a church or a restaurant, you can say, here we go. And the mayor and the governor are the only people that, they're kind of controlling that. But in your all's case, there is another level of governance. And I don't know what that means, but I keep thinking about that.
It's a good point, because even in our case, because of the volume, it's almost got to be a best practices thing at this point. Right. Versus a declaratory shall be. The biggest issue that we're wrangling with, I suspect the colleges are wrangling with, and I think that was the scope of this original committee, was about college and high school, is do we play before we go to school? That's the biggest issue that I'm getting feedback on from our people, and our people are not united on that. We have always had sports before the school year started. But again, I have to give my own advice about 20 may not look like 19. Maybe this is not a year to do that. And I know I've seen some statements from college presidents that don't necessarily line up with what their college ADs are saying, not in our state, but as far as when they're going to start, and coaches getting anxious. So I think Kip, you're right. One of the problems is regulatory and challenges. We're debating, do we come out with a blanket, or do we say for this year, guys, I'm sorry, competitive equity is just not necessarily the highest priority. You want to start before you go to school, fine. If you want to start when you get back, fine. Or do we say everybody has to wait till their first day of class? That's a timing argument that I think the masses are going to decide whether they want to implement it or not, more than declaratory. We'd like to, I'm a little bit old school, I guess. I'm used to being so preoccupied with trying to make things competitively equitable that I say, okay, here's when you're going to do it. But I got to break that mold this year and ask if that's the best thing this year. If Bell County has had one case of COVID-19, is there really a reason their cross-country team can't be out practicing on Log Mountain? While I know in Kenton County, we better not be doing that yet. So that's a real challenge, Kip. You're right. Even when you've got a little bit of authority, it's still a challenge to come up with the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Dwayne, if I can jump in, a couple of things to Julian's points. I know we talked about a couple of other things during this, but the focus is of this committee on university and high school athletics, not so much those others. Yeah. And keep in mind, in the end of the day, these are recommendations, right? Or whatever, a report to what we think. The governor has the final say on these. So I think however we include, to Kip's point, what the SEC tells you to do, what the NCAA tells all of you to do, and Julian works obviously with the education cabinet on a lot of his work too. I mean, all those need to be taken into account, and how we word that in there is important.
Yeah, I think those guidelines are obviously going to be things that we can't necessarily accomplish at every other, high school or university, because they know you've got the wherewithal to accomplish some of those things, and the staff and everything else that comes with it. And so I think you're right. That's a good point, to make sure we don't lose focus on the overarching part as the university high school part of this athletics committee. It's good to think about the other people, because I think some of those best practices and guidelines are still going to be able to, people are going to be able to adopt what we're talking about if it goes through, where the governor uses those to figure out what they're doing in those other younger people. But I do think kind of what the point you said earlier, Julian, is that we've got to stay focused on what we can control. I think how we roll that out, we've got to be careful, because I think even the governor talking about guidelines got confused with being mandates and law rule. We need best practices sounds a lot better as a term, because there's no confusion of what we're trying to deliver. But keep in mind, we're a athletic subcommittee. We're not a bunch of medical experts anyway, so that's all we can deliver. But so from a staff standpoint, what do you feel like is the best for us to get prepared? One, we need to set our next meeting. Two, we need to figure out what do we need to accomplish before that next meeting to make it as productive. I think it needs to be a hardcore, whatever that time period is, using every minute, because that's got to be the one we get the most done before we have a finished product on Friday.
I think if everybody can send their main points that they want this to be in the report to Melissa and Quinn, and if they can do that today or tomorrow, we can collect them all. We can put them in a cumulative document so everybody's looking at one thing. We can send that out ahead of time. Everybody has a chance to go over it real quick. And then Dwayne, I think to your point, we can tick through that list pretty quick and be very productive.
On Friday, if I'm not mistaken, our finish thing, is that still noon on Friday that you need the stuff from us?
That's correct. So, I mean, in theory, we've got a lot of times open on Thursday. Wednesday's pretty booked up at this point, but we've got some time on Thursday that we could do it, or we could even meet Friday morning. But with the understanding, that this document's got to be turned in, that at noon that day. So.
Dwayne, would it be possible that we kind of eyeball something on Thursday, and then if we need to get together Friday for a last second fine tuning, we could?
That's kind of what I was thinking. I'd like to have a little time on Friday to like, hey, we got the finished product. We got a chance for a few tweaks before we turn it over. But Thursday, maybe give ourselves a little more time. I don't know what everybody's opening is on Thursday. I think that's a good day for me. Do you know what times are available, Quinn? I know you talked about this a lot of times on Thursday.
I was muted. Yeah, we pretty much got 12 to 3 is open right now on Thursday.
Right now, that's the window I have free on that day. So
that's my free window. It's exactly what I've got open.
Fine for me.
Holly, does that work for you, Kip?
What you gonna say?
Holly, can you hear me?
Yeah, that works for me.
Perfect.
Can you tell me the time again? I'm sorry, I was trying to get my calendar open.
Well, we've got, I think we've got 12 to 3 open for Thursday.
When
So
I'm showing one of them starts at 2:30.
For Thursday?
Yeah.
It's 3:30.
No, I'm showing one at 2:30 as well. The equine tourism group is at 2:30.
That got rescheduled.
Do we do maybe 1 to 3? If we need that much on Thursday, or 1 o'clock.
Sure.
I'm just where everybody got your lunch break.
Yeah, we can go ahead and say 1.
1 o'clock.
Yep.
On Thursday, and then on Friday, do we need to set something on Friday? Because I think we're definitely going to use one on Friday.
It'll get walked over if you don't set something.
Is 10:30
10:30
or 11 o'clock doable on Friday? 10:30 or 11 o'clock on Friday doable? Like, just give us, even if we got 30 minutes before we got to turn it in, I think it'd be good.
Yeah. I think, you want to say 11 on Friday?
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think Thursday helps us because that gives us a chance to be able to circulate some stuff, digest it, really jump into it by 1 o'clock on Thursday. Seems like we find out a lot of things during our 11 o'clock hour on these calls. So maybe some of those things, will kind of, and I know I'll have a lot more by then. I think we're trying to have our final internal document done on that day.
Now, are you all content with just the reply all to these old emails to send stuff out? Is that okay? That way everybody can see what anybody finds resource wise.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Melissa, I noticed Kevin wasn't on there, but I'll forward him the 2 things I sent. So he probably was blind copied because that's the way things work.
Yeah, I think that was the only email I didn't have was Kevin's when I was looking for a couple of things.
It's double secret. You got to watch it.
We will not say that on this live feed.
No.
Yeah, we won't get it out.
No.
Just to protect your identity. Any other global thoughts? Obviously, if there are any questions that come up, feel free to contact me. I will make sure, I think I sent out my contact information, just making sure if there's any kind of question that came up before. And then that way we have a better chance of having a document that encompasses all the things we want to talk about that we can really run through on Thursday at 1.
And Dwayne,
by Friday.
Could I ask you a favor, Dwayne, as our chair? Could maybe you and Quinn get together and look at those sections that you talked about? Is it preparing, then it's, if it's preparing your body before you get here. Now it's preparing your facility. Now, kind of like, if y'all can do that, maybe then we can just throw stuff underneath there. And that way we're not off on our own going in a different order.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. Now it's easy for me to
give
Quinn
you
and Dwayne to do
pockets. So giving you the pockets to fill in.
There you go. There you go.
Yes.
I got you. Okay, well, we can do that.
Because that wouldn't take long, but that's strictly if y'all have time to do it.
That's fine.
Works for me.
Good to see everybody.
Hey,
No.
thanks.
I need to talk to John offline about the collection that showed up when you first signed on.
I should have shown, after he did that Friday, I took a picture in my garage. I was going to talk to Pete with him. I forgot.
I can take that down. That's my Zoom background.
We'll put it this way. I bet Meredith and Chris and the guys over at Buffalo Trace really appreciate you doing that.
Oh, they do. Trust me, they do.
Kip, I don't know if you missed it when we first came on, but Julian let us know that youth athletics is considered 24 and younger.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll send you that link. We certainly are hoping that's not what our governor thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, are you kidding me?
Anyone with older children know that they don't stop being children at 18.
That's true. I mean, it makes a lot more sense than I thought. It makes a lot of sense.
Oh, thanks, guys. Great work.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We're just going to talk offline. I mean, you want to just take a stab at it and we kind of just go back and forth? What are you thinking?
Yeah, if I'll tell you what, why don't you send me your number and I'll give you a call and we can we can do it that way. Does that work?
Yep. Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.